On today's prediction video, we're going to be doing NC State and Mississippi State. The ACC versus the SEC. It's going to be a good one. Let's go. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's me again, Golden Blue Dude. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. Now's a good time to become a subscriber. I'm in the middle of my preseason prediction videos. This is teams 29 and 30, so don't miss my other predictions as well. Don't forget to check out my friends at N.C.State Wood Sketch. All you have to do is send him a picture, and he'll turn it into a beautiful piece of art on wood. Check out his website at www.tristatewoodsketch.com. Tell him Golden Blue Dude sent you, and you'll get 20% off. Today, we're talking about NC State and Mississippi State, and these two teams do play each other. I think both of these teams are on the rise, but they're very far from elite status. They both have solid foundations with some good coaches. First, we'll start off with NC State. Last year, not only did Dave Doran turn NC State around from 4-8 to 8-4 in a COVID-shortened season, he's also starting to get to the players that he recruited in the 2018 and 2019 recruiting class, which were his two best recruiting classes. NC State could be even better this year. They have great depth and excellent experience. Let's start off with their offense. Last year, they averaged 30.2 points per game. As usual, guys, there are some tricky names on both these rosters, so I probably will mispronounce some names. First, we'll start off with the quarterback. Quarterback Devin Leary, 66 for 110. That's 60%. Threw for 890 yards, 8 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. I think NC State will have a great running game, starting with running back Zonovan Knight. 143 carries for 788 yards, 5.5 yards a carry, and 10 touchdowns. But they also have running back Ricky Person Jr. 147 carries, 643 yards, 4.4 yards a carry, and 4 touchdowns. NC State's going to have a pretty good passing game as well, starting with the tight ends. The wide tight end, Cameron Walker. He's an incoming 3-star. He's 6'5", 240 pounds. Then the tight end F, Dylan Parham, 4 receptions for 52 yards last year. NC State has an excellent wide receiving core, starting with wide receiver Devin Carter, 29 receptions for 477 yards, 2 touchdowns. Wide receiver Emeka Emezi, 47 receptions for 738 yards and 5 touchdowns. Wide receiver Thayer Thomas, 42 receptions for 529 yards and 6 touchdowns. Wide receiver C.J. Riley, 9 receptions for 123 yards and 2 touchdowns. Wide receiver Josiah Provolone, 2 receptions for 58 yards. That was in 2019. And wide receiver Porter Rooks, 24 receptions for 276 yards. NC State will have a potent offense that shouldn't be overlooked. Now let's look at the Wolfpack's defense. If NC State's defense could be more consistent, it could be a top 5 defense in the ACC. The biggest problem last year was consistency. They had a very up and down season in 2020 on that side of the ball. Last year, they allowed 29.2 points per game and allowed 415.7 yards a game. They have 9 starters back on the defense, so a lot of experience coming back. The one thing that has to improve is that run defense. That was the weakness of this defense last year. Let's take a look at their front 7, starting with the defensive line. Defensive end Daniel Joseph, 37 tackles, 17 by himself, 6.5 sacks. Defensive tackle C.J. Clark, 24 tackles, 5 by himself. Defensive end Savion Jackson, 20 tackles, 7 by himself, 1 sack. Now the linebacking core. Linebacker Drake Thomas, 58 tackles, 25 by himself, 3 sacks, 1 pass deflection. Linebacker Isaiah Moore, 94 tackles, 38 by himself, 3 sacks, 2 pass deflections. And then the key to NC State's defense, linebacker Peyton Wilson. This dude needs to stay healthy. 108 tackles, 57 by himself, 3.5 sacks, 2 interceptions, and 1 pass deflections. He is the leader and the heart and soul of this defense. And nickelback Tyler Baker Williams, 59 tackles, 32 by himself, 1.5 sacks, 1 interception, and 8 pass deflections. I think the secondary has the potential of being the strength of the defense. They have plenty of experience and excellent depth in the secondary. Starting with the cornerbacks. Quarterback Cecil Powell, 47 tackles, 32 by himself, 1 forced fumble, and 4 pass deflections. Cornerback Shaheem Battle, 36 tackles, 24 by himself, 1 sack, 1 interception, and 10 pass deflections. In the West Virginia transfer, cornerback Derek Pitts Jr. The last season he played, he had 2 solo tackles. Free safety Tanner Engel, 33 tackles, 22 by himself, 2 pass deflections. Florida State transfer free safety Cyrus Fagan. He's a 4-star recruit, but he needs stability. Strong safety Jakeem Harris, 76 tackles, 43 by himself, 1 interception, and 7 pass deflections. If the run defense can get figured out and linebacker Peyton Wilson stays healthy, NC State will be a very dangerous team in 2021. In my book, NC State is the underdog and the wild card in the ACC Atlantic. Here's a look at NC State's 2021 football schedule. Start the season with a home game against South Florida. Win. In the road trip to Mississippi State, I'll predict that here in a little bit. A home game against Furman. Win. A home game against Clemson. I'm saying a loss, but NC State is capable of upsetting Clemson in Raleigh. Then they get Louisiana Tech at home. Win. In their bye week. At Boston College, could be tricky, but I'll give them a win. At Miami, that's a loss. Louisville at home. Win. At Florida State. Win. At Wake Forest. Win. Syracuse at home. Win. Then they finish off the season with North Carolina at home. I have that as a loss, but that also could be a win for North Carolina State. So depending on the Mississippi State prediction, I have NC State going either 9-3 or 8-4. By the way, NC State's preseason ranking is 38th. Last year they went 8-4, 5th in the ACC because there were no divisions. Now it's time to look at Mississippi State. Their preseason ranking is 49th. I thought it would be lower than that. That's a little surprising. Last year they finished the season 4-7, 7th in the SEC West. Their first year under head coach Mike Leach for Mississippi State was in a COVID year, so it was unusual circumstances. And Mississippi State had zero consistency. Very up and down. Sometimes you wondered if it was even the same team that played from week to week. That's how inconsistent they were. We'll start with their offense. Most of the offensive line is back, but like the rest of the team, they have to be more consistent as well. Last year they averaged 21.4 points per game. That's 110th in the nation. That's unheard of under a Mike Leach offense. They averaged 340.2 yards a game. Let's start with quarterback Will Rogers. Last year he was 239 for 346. That's 69.1%. Threw for 1,976 yards, 11 touchdowns, but 7 interceptions. Mississippi State will have a decent run game. Nothing to brag about, but decent. Starting with running back Jaquavius Marks. 70 carries for 312 yards, 4.5 yards a carry, and 3 touchdowns. Running back Dylan Johnson. 51 carries for 225 yards, 4.4 yards a carry, and 4 touchdowns. Now let's look at the passing game. Mike Leach's specialty. Here's the wide receiving core. Wide receiver Malik Heath. 37 receptions for 307 yards and 3 touchdowns. Wide receiver Jaden Wally. 52 receptions for 718 yards and 2 touchdowns. Wide receiver Austin Williams. 43 receptions for 372 yards and 3 touchdowns. Wide receiver Didiotrick Griffin. 10 receptions for 61 yards and 1 touchdown. They got the Cal transfer. Wide receiver McKay Polk. 17 receptions for 183 yards and 1 touchdown. And the incoming 3-star recruit. Wide receiver Caleb Ducking. He's 6'5", 195 pounds. That is an extremely large wide receiver. Here's the thing. Against SEC defenses, Mike Leach has to learn to develop and strengthen the run game. Mississippi State's offense is capable of being explosive, but in the SEC, you have to set up those explosive plays. You can't just pass every play. Here's a look at Mississippi State's defense. The biggest concern for Mississippi State is depth. They do not have a lot of depth on that side of the ball. Last year, they allowed 28.1 points per game and allowed 389.7 yards a game. Here's a look at their defensive line. Defensive end Aaron Odom, 18 tackles, 8 by himself, 2 sacks, and 1 pass deflection. Defensive tackle Jaden Rumedy, 32 tackles, 8 by himself, 2 sacks, 2 pass deflections. Defensive tackle Nathan Pickering, 15 tackles, 2 by himself, and 2 sacks. Now Mississippi State's linebacking core. Linebacker Tyrus Wheat, 30 tackles, 12 by himself, 5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 1 interception, and 2 pass deflections. Linebacker Nathaniel Watson, 39 tackles, 15 by himself, 1 pass deflection. And linebacker Aaron Brule, 76 tackles, 30 by himself, 4 sacks, and 3 pass deflections. Mississippi State likes to run a 3-3-5 defense. Now in a 3-3-5 defense, the secondary is much more important than the traditional 4-3-3-4 defense. Luckily for Mississippi State, the secondary should be the strength of this defense, starting with their cornerbacks. Cornerback Martin Emerson, 72 tackles, 44 by himself, 11 pass deflections. Cornerback Emmanuel Forbes, 44 tackles, 23 by himself, 5 interceptions, 3 of those he returned for a touchdown, and 6 pass deflections. Free safety Fred Peters, 20 tackles, 10 by himself, 1 forced fumble, and 1 pass deflection. At strong safety, they have the Texas transfer, Jalen Green, 14 tackles, 11 by himself, 1 interception, and 2 pass deflections. And safety Sean Preston Jr., 65 tackles, 35 by himself, and 4 pass deflections. I do think Mississippi State will improve this year. The problem is, so will most of the SEC West. Here's a look at Mississippi State's 2021 college football schedule. They start off the season with a home game against Louisiana Tech. Win. In the home game against NC State. I'll predict that here in just a minute. At Memphis. That's going to be a tough road game, but I do think Mississippi State pulls off the win in that game. LSU at home. Loss. At Texas A&M. Loss. Then they get their bye week. Alabama at home. Loss. At Vanderbilt. Win. Kentucky at home. Loss. At Arkansas. Loss. At Auburn. Loss. Tennessee State at home. That's a win. And then Ole Miss at home. Loss. So depending on the NC State prediction, I have Mississippi State going either 5-7 or 4-8. Yikes. Now the 2 games that could flip to wins to send Mississippi State to a bowl could be at Auburn and the rivalry game at home against Ole Miss. It wouldn't surprise me if Mississippi State won won those two games, or at least one of them. Now time for the NC State at Mississippi State prediction. On paper, NC State is the better team, but this game is in Starkville. Mississippi State has a tremendous home field advantage, especially with them cowbells. Those are annoying. I think this is a very back and forth game. Both of these teams will put up a fair amount of points, so it's going to be a higher scoring game. But in the end, I think Mississippi State will pull off a mild upset and beat NC State at home. My final score is Mississippi State 45, NC State 37. This is going to be a game you're going to want to watch, an underrated game. It was very difficult for me to pick the winner on this, but I'm going with the mild upset in my eyes. I'll take Mississippi State in this game. So that means overall, I have NC State going 8-4 once again. I think they finish right behind Clemson in the ACC Atlantic in second place. And even though their record doesn't improve, I do think NC State takes a step forward in 2021. I think the Wolfpack has a bright future. I really do. So that means for Mississippi State, I have them going 5-7. I could see that road trip to Auburn, the home rivalry game against Ole Miss, flipping to a win, which would send Mississippi State to a bowl game. But right now, I have them going 5-7. It's still a step forward. Maybe they can figure out that defense and that run game and surprise me. I don't know. But right now, 5-7 is what looks good in my eyes. That's all I got for you for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.